If Theo had known that a simple word like sweet would send an alien officer into full-color panic mode, he might have opted for silence and let his mouth stay busy chewing the purple, mildly wiggling snack Zan 3 had insisted was harmless and joy-producing. But he didn't, and now, less than 3 seconds after his casual compliment, his ataraxy liaison stood bolt upright, her pale face blushing into an unmistakable crimson bloom that spread across her cheeks like an involuntary alarm. Her armor gave a small hum. Her ears, those elegant, elongated arcs that tapered like carved bone, quivered slightly. Then came the explosion. "What?" Theo blinked. He'd said it in English. Not in Standard, not in the Ataraxy dialect she preferred. Just a casual, throwaway Earth phrase. "I just said you're sweet," he replied, hands lifting instinctively in defense, though the only things he had to defend himself with were a half-eaten spoon and an unshakable tendency to say the wrong thing at exactly the wrong time. She stared at him as though he'd just proposed interspecies marriage over fermented protein cubes. Then she turned sharply, muttered something in Ataraxy that sounded like flower-headed fungus fool, and stormed out of the common area, leaving behind only the faint hum of her kinetic armor and the smell of toasted algae. Theo sat in stunned silence, spoon still poised midair. Zan 3, the culinary bot whose head resembled a chrome eggplant and whose personality subroutines had been rewritten 3 times by board engineers, rolled over to refill Theo's nutrient tray. "A new personal record," it chirped. "Embarrassment induced in under 5 seconds. Would you like celebratory pudding?" "No pudding," Theo groaned. "What did I do?" "You complimented an ataraxy without formal prelude, sensory modulation, or ranking context. In simpler terms, you said something nice with your mouth hole, and now her hormone lanterns are misfiring. Excellent work." "That was not in the manual," Theo muttered. "It was. Appendix G, page 79. Right after, 'Don't touch the tails of the Deplorians without verbal consent.'" He buried his face in his hands. It wasn't supposed to go this way. His assignment aboard the diplomatic vessel Juna's Whisper had been straightforward. Observe, assist, don't start wars. A linguistic liaison for Earth's diplomatic corps, he'd imagined dusty translations, occasional coffee with xeno-diplomats, and long hours pretending to care about ancient artifacts. Instead, he found himself partnered with Lyrana Vel, a high-ranking envoy whose facial expressions ranged from mildly irritated to considering your demise. She was brilliant, meticulous, and had once corrected a mispronounced verb by casually freezing the translator's water into a sharp point and using it as a pen. They'd been assigned together to decode the crystal glyphs discovered on a derelict moon base, relics of a long-extinct species that apparently adored symbols shaped like spirals, teeth, and suspiciously baked pastries. They made a good team, until now. He wandered the corridor toward her quarters, unsure if apologizing would worsen things or simply get him added to the Ataraxy people to regret existing list. Her door was closed, glowing with a faint red halo that meant, "Do not disturb unless on fire." He stared at it. Then he turned away and went to the medical bay. The ship's med AI was an ancient, cube-shaped unit whose voice sounded like a grandmother with bronchitis. "Ah, Mr. Marlowe," it rasped. "What have you ruined today?" I said the word sweet to an Ataraxy, and she turned red and ran off. Of course she did. Could you elaborate? The cube word. Ataraxy emotional expressions are highly chromatic. Red is a potent combination of embarrassment, romantic awareness, and potential combat instinct. You have, in effect, flirted, proposed, and insulted her social stability, simultaneously. Theo leaned back against the wall and muttered, "Brilliant." "You might attempt a recalibrated clarification," the Med AI offered, "or leave the ship forever." "Helpful." Back in his quarters, Theo attempted damage control. He composed a message. "Dear Lyrina, I'm terribly sorry if I caused any offense with my words earlier. In my culture, sweet is a common compliment, not a mating proposal, promise of alliance, or food reference. Sincerely, Theo." He deleted it after realizing that using the word again probably counted as a second offense. Instead, he wrote, "Dear Lyrina, I'm an idiot. Respectfully, Theo still too much. He sighed, closed the message entirely, and went to find the only other creature on the ship who'd listen. The gardener. Zook, a jellyfish-like entity who maintained the hydroponic bay and frequently gave relationship advice whether asked or not, floated in his nutrient pool, spritzing mist over the vine lamps. "I messed up," Theo said. "Is it about the ataraxy woman?" Zook asked without turning. "The entire greenhouse already knows." Theo groaned. "Why is everyone faster than the newsnet?" "Because gossip travels through spores here," Zook said serenely. "She likes you, you know." Theo blinked. "She... what?" "The redness. It means heightened emotional resonance. Possibly affection, possibly a desire to duel. Sometimes both." Theo slumped against a growlite. "That's a wide spectrum. And yet, you're still here talking to a jellyfish instead of running," Zook said with a tendril curl. "Which means you like her too." He didn't answer. He didn't have to. He didn't see Lyrina for 2 days. When she finally appeared in the crystal chamber for translation duty, she wore a full helmet. The visor glowed faintly violet. Theo cleared his throat. "Hi." Silence. "I brought snacks." Still nothing. "They're bland. No triggering adjectives. Pure cubes. Total flavor neutrality." The visor tilted slightly. Theo set the container down and sat beside the glyph panel. "Also, I promise not to call you sweet again." There was a long pause, then a voice, slightly filtered through the helmet. "Good." He nodded. "You're moderately efficient at translating ancient script." "You are adequately non-disruptive when conscious," she replied. He grinned. Maybe, just maybe, he hadn't ruined everything. She reached for a translation stylus, paused, and added, "Also, the snacks are not entirely horrible." Xanthri's voice crackled over the comm. "Do I hear the delicate unfolding of alien affection? Shall I cue romantic lighting?" Both of them yelled "no" at the same time, but neither of them moved away. It was an unspoken rule aboard Juna's whisper that silence meant progress or trouble, and Theo had begun to suspect it was the latter. For 3 days, Lyrina had spoken to him only in monosyllables, and only when absolutely necessary. That wouldn't have been strange had it not been for the faint glimmering blush that lingered around her neck every time he entered a room. It pulsed like an emergency beacon, or according to Zook, like the glow of internal chaos wrapped in mild romantic distress. Which didn't help. He tried not to read into things, tried not to flinch every time her voice rose half an octave or her armor gave that strange metallic purr. And he definitely tried not to remember how her ears had twitched when he said efficient in a compliment-like tone. Apparently that was code for, "I appreciate your existence with subtle admiration," or maybe "let's genetically bond forever," depending on her interpretation. That morning he arrived early to the glyph chamber, hoping to decode more than just alien spirals. He found her already there, staring intently at a rotating projection of glyph 72B, the one shaped like a melting pine cone. "I think it's a directive," she said without turning. "A warning, maybe. The placement of the sub-symbols suggests urgency. Urgency as in don't touch, or you've already doomed us all?" She gave a faint shrug. With extinct species, the answer is usually both. He stepped beside her, careful to keep a respectable distance. "You still mad at me?" Her ears twitched. "No." "That sounded like a no that means yes, but I'm repressing it for diplomatic reasons." "I said no." "Okay, just checking. For the record, I have no intention of causing further chromatic incidents." She turned her head and he could have sworn the faintest pink hue bloomed across her cheeks. "Your phrasing is primitive." "That's just how we do things on Earth," he said, grinning. "Primitive and proud." She shook her head. "You're impossible. And yet you haven't requested a transfer." Silence again. Not angry, but thoughtful. Then, "Because you're useful." Sometimes Xanthri's voice buzzed through the wall panel. "Is this a moment?" "It sounds like a moment. Shall I notify the ship's drama log?" "No," they both said. Xanthri continued anyway. "For the record, the odds of a successful cross-cultural bonding between a Terran and an Ataraxy are 4,031 to 1. high probability of social combustion, accidental nuptial gestures, and catastrophic emotional entanglement. But I believe in you, Theo groaned. Please stop believing in me. Lyrina turned back to the glyph. The pine cone symbol is linked to the triad of time glyphs. Look, here. She pointed with the stylus, the tip hovering just above a curling spiral that shimmered with faint golden light. This suggests continuity, not just a warning, but a cycle, a repetition. Like a reset button? Or a trap? He leaned closer, then realized she was closer too. They both froze for a moment, their faces inches apart. Her eyes, slightly larger than human, with that iridescent shimmer that made her look perpetually thoughtful, met his. A flicker of blush, a twitch of ears. Then she leaned away. Trap it is, he said quickly, heart trying to escape through his ribs. That seems like the safer assumption. Later that day, Theo found himself summoned to the captain's viewing chamber, which was never good news. Captain Vel Letho, a gelatinous being with 3 eyes and a passion for earth jazz, swayed behind his console. I see you've survived another week with the ataraxy, Vel Letho said, voice bubbling like carbonated syrup. Impressive. I try not to be offensive more than once per calendar cycle. I'm updating your file to learning compatible. Touching. Vel Letho's middle eye blinked. We've received a distress signal. Faint, possibly automated. Origin point, planetary body Oven 6C. Uninhabited, mostly. Theo squinted at the readout. Those glyphs we've been translating, they mention Oven, repeatedly. Coincidence? In science fiction, never. Lyrina was already in the docking bay when Theo arrived. She wore a neutral tone field uniform and a helmet with a retractable visor. Her ears, he noted, were partially exposed, a subtle ataraxy sign of conditional trust. Or maybe it was just hot in the suit. You're late, she said. I was busy upgrading my translation settings to slightly less embarrassing. They boarded the shuttle and launched, the stars thinning into the violet swirl of planetary atmosphere. The surface of Oven 6C was rocky and wind-blasted, with spires of crystal that rang when the wind passed through them. Low, haunting notes like a choir of glass whales. Theo stepped out and immediately tripped on a root. Lyrina didn't laugh. Not out loud, anyway. But the corner of her mouth twitched, and one ear flicked backward. This is a very hostile environment, Theo muttered, brushing dust off his knees. You were defeated by a plant. An aggressive plant, clearly territorial. They followed the signal toward a narrow cave lined with glyphs almost identical to the ones they'd been studying. The cave pulsed faintly, as though alive. Inside, they found the source, a small, cube-shaped device, humming with energy. This is ancient, Lyrina said, scanning it with her gauntlet. Predates even the glyphs, possibly a central relay node. Theo knelt beside it. Think it still works? As if responding, the device emitted a chime and projected a holographic interface filled with shifting symbols. Some were familiar, others entirely new. I recognize this one, he said, pointing. It means connection, or bond, depending on context. She nodded slowly. The context might be both. They looked at each other, then at the device, then back again. Don't touch it, she said. He touched it. The chamber lit up in golden light, the symbols swirling around them, a storm of knowledge, memory, and meaning flooding through the air. Xanthri's voice crackled through the comm. What did you do? I think we just activated an alien dating service, Theo said. Lyrina's armor hissed. Her blush returned, even deeper this time. I'm going to end you, she muttered, but she didn't move away. Xanthri insisted on calling the device the Cube of Emotional Doom, despite Lyrina's protest that it was likely a memory relay or a socio-cultural archive. The name stuck, mostly because every time Theo entered a room, it hummed and cast a warm glow directly at him, like it recognized his awkward earth charm and was deeply amused by it. Back aboard Juna's Whisper, they placed the cube in the central decryption bay and began slow linking it to the ship's cognitive interface. Every time the feed touched an unknown symbol, it pinged with an oddly cheerful chime, like it was playing a game of alien charades with the crew's sanity. I think it likes you, Zan 3 said, hovering above the terminal in a state of smug entertainment. Possibly imprinted on you, or worse, identified you as emotionally vulnerable. Why would that be worse? Theo asked, sipping from his oversweetened stim drink. Because it means you're now the equivalent of a galactic soap opera protagonist. Congratulations. We've reached peak melodrama. Lyrina didn't respond. She stood near the cube with arms folded, her posture rigid. Her ears twitched only slightly now whenever Theo was in range, which he chose to interpret as progress, or exhaustion. I think it's trying to show us something, she said, nodding toward the swirling symbols. The patterns are rhythmic, narrative, like stories. Theo squinted at the projections, which showed looping figures intertwining with abstract shapes. Are we being romanced by a sentient rock? Zan 3 buzzed excitedly. I always wanted to be a bridesmaid at a cross-species union ceremony. No one is marrying the cube, Lyrana snapped. Theo raised an eyebrow. That sounded defensive. I am merely clarifying the absurd trajectory of this conversation. Sure, no emotional entanglement whatsoever. She inhaled slowly. If I had a projectile weapon, I'd use it to clarify your brain cells. They returned to translating the cube's data stream, which now included auditory tones and occasional bursts of scent. At one point, the unmistakable aroma of burnt cinnamon. Theo made a note. Alien technology, possibly nostalgic, possibly deranged. Each evening, he and Lyrina reviewed new glyphs in the quiet observation alcove that overlooked the starboard nebula fields. It became routine, calm, weirdly peaceful, and filled with strange moments where their fingers brushed while passing styluses, or their laughter overlapped and hung in the air longer than either expected. One night, the cube projected a hologram of two figures, one unmistakably human, the other clearly ataraxy, facing each other with a glowing thread between them. The image dissolved and a glyph shimmered in its place. Lyrina stared at it, then turned sharply. It means threshold, she said. Theo tilted his head. Like crossing into something? Exactly, a transition, a decision. You sure it's not suggesting we update our relationship status? Her blush arrived in a flash, coloring her neck and jaw. You trivialize everything. I process through comedy. It's either that or mild screaming. Later, when Lyrina was in the strategy chamber and Theo was supposed to be asleep, he returned to the decryption bay. The cube pulsed faintly as he approached. Okay, he whispered, just between us. Are you matchmaking? The cube emitted a soft chime. That's not a no. The next day, Vel-Letho summoned them again. The cube's energy fluctuations had been detected from a neighboring star sector. An Ataraxy vessel was on approach, and its commanding officer had requested immediate access to the artifact. Lyrana went silent at the mention of the ship's name, Vareth's Light. Theo noticed. Old friends? Old judgments. Within hours, the Ataraxy ship arrived, sleek in silver with fractal etching along its hull. Its captain, Veln-Sor, beamed aboard with 3 attendants and the expression of someone who expected applause. Lyrina, he said, performing the formal ear tilt of acknowledgement. You haven't destroyed anything recently. Impressive. She returned the gesture with minimal enthusiasm. Veln. Veln's gaze shifted to Theo. And the human. The one who tripped on a root and reactivated an ancestral beacon of emotion. Fascinating. Theo smiled weakly. It's a gift. The formal meeting was tense. Veln insisted the cube be returned to Ataraxy High Command. Lyrina countered that the device had already initiated a cognitive bond with a multi-species vessel. Protocol dictated continued study on board Juna's Whisper. Theo tried not to chew his fingernail but gave up midway. I propose a demonstration, Veln said, gesturing toward the cube. Let it decide. Activate it now, in the presence of both parties. Everyone looked at Theo. I swear, if this thing proposes to me in front of an audience, I'm going to file a report with HR. He stepped forward, touched the cube again. It flared, bright and golden, projections spinning around the room, figures interlocked in dance, symbols of unity and divergence, looping trails of memory. At the center of it all was the threshold glyph again, now pulsing, and beside it, a new glyph. Theo blinked. That one, it's new, Lyrina translated aloud. It means choice. Veln stared at it, frowning. That's, not standard. No, Liarina said quietly. It's personalized. Theo looked from one alien to the other. Wait, are we in a trial? A cosmic love tribunal? Xan-3's voice echoed from above. Confirmed. You are now legally entangled in a symbolic decision nexus. Congratulations. It's like a wedding but with more paperwork. Liarina didn't laugh, but she didn't argue either. After Veln departed, suitably annoyed and thoroughly decubed, they found themselves once again in the observation alcove. The stars stretched out in silence. Theo fiddled with a loose thread on his sleeve. You didn't have to back me up, he said, against your own people. They're not my people, she said softly. Not anymore. He looked at her, really looked. The faint blush had faded, but something else lingered. An openness in her posture, a gentler set to her jaw. Maybe the cube's right, he said. Maybe we are at a threshold. Her ears twitched. Thresholds require steps. I'm working on it. She nodded slowly. Just don't trip over another root. He grinned. No promises. Theo had started keeping a notebook. It wasn't digital, which offended Xan-3 deeply. You're surrounded by the most advanced artificial memory banks in 4 systems, the droid had buzzed one morning, and yet you choose dead tree pulp? It's not tree pulp, it's synthetic fiber composite, Theo replied, tapping his stylus against the cover. Besides, I like writing things down. It feels real, like I'm anchoring thoughts to the universe. You're anchoring your thoughts to a napkin with delusions of grandeur. Despite the criticism, Theo filled page after page. Observations, translations of cube glyphs, stray jokes Liarina pretended not to laugh at, and, though he would never admit it, lines that tried and failed to be poetry. He mostly wrote at night, in the quiet, while the stars smeared themselves lazily across the window of his cabin. Liarina knocked one evening, holding a data crystal. I finished decoding the final layer, she said, stepping inside. The cube is more than we thought. Theo looked up, blinking. Wait, I thought we already established it was a galactic dating coach. She didn't smile. That was a red flag. It's alive. That got him standing. Alive? As in breathing? Eating? Number cognizant. Reactive. Aware. It has preferences. Like, it prefers me. It prefers emotional resonance. You just happen to leak it constantly. He scratched the back of his neck. I'm not sure if that's a compliment or a mental health concern. They brought the cube into the biosensory chamber for further testing. Xan-3 joined them, partly to monitor energy signatures and partly to provide unnecessary commentary. Liarina interfaced with the ship's neural grid, setting up filters to track the cube's responses to various stimuli. Let's start basic, she said. Memory stimuli. She activated a stream of auditory data, whispers and ataraxy, overlapping with Earth music. The cube pulsed, then extruded a small filament of glowing mist, which coiled into the shape of 2 interlocked forms, one with elongated ears, one without. Theo tilted his head. That looks like us. Don't be ridiculous, Liarina muttered. Xan-3 emitted a delighted warble. It's definitely you. Look, the male one is slouching like it's never heard of posture. Theo pointed at the mist. And that one's got her arms crossed like she's about to argue someone into a coma. Liarina cleared her throat. Moving on. She triggered emotional resonance mapping. The cube's pulses synchronized with her neural rhythms. Then Theo's. When they stood apart, the pulses were mild. When they stepped closer, unintentionally just a little, the pulses spiked, deepened, and turned a warmer hue. Xan-3 turned theatrically. This is the part where I leave to respect your privacy. You're a floating camera with no concept of personal space, Theo said. Exactly. So I'm very good at recognizing when others need it. After the droid exited, the silence felt unusually thick. Liarina stepped back from the console and folded her arms. Not angrily, just out of habit. There's something else, she said. The cube didn't come to us by accident. It's part of a larger network, one that was lost during the diaspora collapse. It's seeking emotional stabilizers. Anchors. Theo blinked. Wait, are you saying it's lonely? Possibly. Or it simply seeks what it was built to enhance. Connection. That's sort of beautiful. It's also deeply dangerous. If others discover this network, it could be exploited. He took a moment. Then we have to protect it. She looked at him like she was trying to solve a puzzle, then glanced away. Yes, we do. Later, while Theo was asleep with his notebook open across his chest, the ship's alarm jolted them both into alertness. Red lights flared. Zan 3's voice crackled through the speaker. We have company. They scrambled to the control bay. A vessel loomed ahead, unregistered but armed, its design sleek and almost insectoid. Pirates, Lyrina muttered. Specifically mind-tappers. They track emotional anomalies to find rare tech. Theo stared. So basically, emotion vampires with a ship. The incoming hail was static-filled, but clear enough. Surrender the artifact or face disassembly. Lyrina refused, of course. Theo didn't even know how to surrender something emotionally bound to him. The cube pulsed again, more rapidly this time, as if nervous or preparing. They're trying to breach the shields, Zan 3 said. I've rerouted the core, but we can't take a full hit. Wait, Theo said, stepping closer to the cube. What if we let it respond? You want to weaponize a lonely emotion ball? Not weaponize, let it defend itself. The moment he touched it again, the cube expanded. Not physically, but in light and presence. It radiated warmth and began emitting frequencies that overloaded the pirate vessel's scanners. The enemy ship faltered, stumbled, then peeled off course like a confused animal sniffing something it didn't like. Zan 3 chirped. They've disengaged. They left. Confused. Possibly afraid. That's a new one. Theo let out a slow breath. Good cube. Lyrina stepped beside him. It chose you again. You realize that? I think it chose us. I'm just louder. She didn't argue. That was new. She also didn't step away. For the first time in cycles, the ship was quiet again. Lyrina didn't return to her quarters. Neither did Theo. They sat near the cube, which now glowed softly, contentedly. He opened his notebook again. Are you going to write about this? She asked. Maybe. If I can find a word that rhymes with panicked, emotional, sentient cube. That seems unlikely. That's what makes it poetry. She reached over and slowly, awkwardly, took the stylus from his hand. Maybe I'll help this time. His grin was as wide as the nebula outside the window. Lyrina had never been to Earth. She'd studied its biology, memorized its fractal languages, even once spent an entire week trying to eat spaghetti with a spoon because a cultural primer mislabeled utensils. But now, standing under Earth's moonlight with Theo, she realized nothing in her data banks had prepared her for actual humidity. Why is the air wet? She muttered, pinching her sleeve. Is your planet leaking? It's called dew. It's romantic. It's clammy. They walked down a quiet street in what Theo insisted was a small town, but Lyrina suspected was merely a larger suburb pretending to be quaint. The cube hovered behind them, disguised by a holographic shell in the shape of a floating backpack with what Theo called stickers of ironic rebellion. The Galactic Diplomatic Corps had finally declassified the cube, after multiple hearings, 2 psychic standoffs, and 1 incident involving a hyper-empathetic jellyfish species bursting into song. As a compromise, the cube would remain under neutral supervision which somehow had been assigned to Theo and Lyrina jointly. I still think it's suspicious that they gave us full custody, she said. You hacked their interstellar translator to make everyone sound like they were underwater for 6 hours, he replied. I think they just wanted you off the premises. It was a necessary demonstration. They stopped in front of a strange old building with tall iron gates and glowing signage. This is where you wanted to take me? She asked. It's a drive-in theater, he said proudly. We watch moving images from our vehicles. We're not in a vehicle. We improvise. The movie was a restored version of a romantic comedy from the early 21st century. It involved misunderstandings, declarations in the rain, and a scene where 2 humans ran through an airport without security stopping them, which Lyrina declared was pure fantasy. As they sat on the hood of a borrowed car, wrapped in a blanket and arguing about whether the protagonist's relationship was emotionally sustainable, the cube began to glow, slowly, warmly. It's resonating again, she murmured. Theo nodded. It does that when you insult my movie taste. No, it's more than that. It's stabilizing. It's grounding itself. It's bonding to the moment. He looked at her. She looked at him. Are we the moment? He asked. That may be the cheesiest thing you've said all month, but you didn't deny it. She turned away, though her ears flushed in a telltale shade of lavender. Let's just say it has chosen wisely. The next morning they returned to the ship, still technically on loan from the Intergalactic Relations Board, though Zan 3 had begun calling it home in his status updates. Ah, welcome back, the droid chirped. I assume the human tradition of watching primitive mating rituals via light projection was satisfactory? Theo rubbed his eyes. We call it a date, Zan, and yes, it was satisfactory. I calculated a 93% chance you would return with increased hormonal bonding. The other 7% involved one of you being arrested for public emotional display. Lirina ignored the commentary. Prepare for hyperspace. I want to visit the coordinates we found in the cube's archive. The ones marked with that symbol. She pointed to a looping glyph. It had appeared several times, always in places where the cube's pulse had slowed. Places of silence, perhaps, or rest. Theo leaned against the console. Think we'll find others like it? Maybe. Or maybe we'll find the reason it existed in the first place. The ship hummed, the stars stretched, and the universe unfolded like a ribbon. Days later, they arrived. There was no station, no signs of civilization, just a drifting field of crystalline structures, shattered, silent, glinting in the void. Remnants of something vast. The cube pulsed, slow and reverent. This was a network node, Lirina whispered. It connected others, but now it's just echoes. Theo floated beside her in the observation pod. Then maybe we help it rebuild, one connection at a time. She looked at him, the human who had once called her sweet without knowing it meant anything, who had stumbled through her culture like a toddler in a museum, knocking over metaphors and tripping on nuance, and somehow made her feel seen anyway. He'd grown too, from nervous chatter to quiet strength, from frantic jokes to intentional ones. He still said dumb things, of course, but now he said them with heart. Maybe we do, she said. They sent a signal into the remains. A simple transmission. No demands. No agendas. Just a message of presence, of understanding, of intent. The cube responded, not with color or sound, but by settling, calming, as if at last it had found a still point in the chaos. Back aboard the ship, Lirina sat across from Theo at the small table that had once served as a makeshift language lab, debate zone, and snack dispenser hub. Now it was just theirs. Do you think, she asked, sipping from a cup of something approximating tea, that our species are even remotely compatible long-term? Genetically, probably not. Socially, barely. Metaphorically, we're killing it. She smiled. No, really, he continued. You challenge me. I challenge you. We argue about everything except the one thing we agree on, which is that somehow, despite logic, distance, and interspecies regulations, this works. She tilted her head. You are sweet. His eyes widened. Wait, did you just say that deliberately? I did. And she turned red. This time neither of them ran.